You open that tax bill again this year, same envelope, bigger number, and you paid it because you always pay it. But here's what I came here to tell you. A lot of seniors sitting in homes they already own, homes they paid off years ago, are legally not required to pay what they're paying. Not all of it. In some cases, not any of it. And almost nobody tells them. I'm going to walk you through 4 things today. 4 ways the property tax on your home can be cut, frozen, or stopped entirely. The first 3 will save you real money this year. But the 4th one, the last one, is the one almost everyone gets wrong. It's the one you might be doing wrong right now, this very minute, without knowing it. And it's the one that can stop your property tax payments cold while you keep living in your home. I learned this the slow way, the way I learned most things. I spent years around Amish and plain families in Holmes County, Ohio, watching ordinary people on small incomes hold onto their land for generations. And one old farmer said something to me over a fence line that stuck. He said, never pay a man what you don't owe him, and never assume he'll tell you when you've stopped owing it. That stuck with me. Because the truth about property tax goes back further than most people realize, all the way to 1839, to a law passed in the Republic of Texas to keep families from losing their homes. And what they built into that law is the same thing protecting seniors today, if they know to ask. This works whether you're comfortable or whether you're counting every dollar until the next check comes. Especially if you're counting, stay with me, because what I save for last is the part they bury deepest. Let me lay out all 4 so you know exactly where we're headed. The first is the exemption you were never told to file for. The second is the freeze that locks your home's value so your bill stops climbing. The third is built specifically for those of you on a fixed income who think none of this applies to you. And the 4th, the one I'm holding for the end, is the deferral. The legal way to stop paying property tax entirely while you stay in your house. That last one is the most powerful and the most hidden, and we'll get there together. So let me start with the first, because it's the one that quietly costs seniors the most every single year. The homestead exemption. Here's the surprising truth that frames this whole thing. In most states, the break you're entitled to as a senior homeowner is not automatic. Let me say that again, because it's the single most expensive misunderstanding in this entire video. It does not happen on its own. Nobody mails it to you. Nobody flips a switch when you turn 65. You have to claim it. You have to file a piece of paper. And if you never file that paper, you pay the full amount year after year for as long as you own the home. Now, let me give you the history, because this is older and deeper than most people think. That 1839 homestead law in Texas I mentioned was the first of its kind on this continent. The idea was radical for the time. It said a family's home was sacred ground, protected from creditors and protected from being taxed into oblivion. After the Civil War, state after state wrote homestead protections into their constitutions. By the time the Great Depression hit in the 1930s, homeowners were losing their houses over unpaid property taxes, and states responded by carving out the modern homestead exemption, a chunk of your home's value that simply cannot be taxed. Here's how it works in plain terms. Say your home is assessed at $150,000. A homestead exemption might knock $50,000 right off the top before they ever calculate what you owe. You're only taxed on $100,000. And for seniors, that exemption is almost always bigger. Many states stack an extra senior exemption on top, just for being over 65. Some add another layer if you're a veteran, another if you're disabled, another if your income is below a certain line. I watched a woman in her 70s, a widow, sit at her kitchen table and realized she'd been paying the full freight for 11 years after her husband passed. 11 years. She qualified the whole time. She just never filed a form, because no one at the county ever picked up the phone to tell her she should. When she finally filed, her bill dropped by nearly $900 a year. $900 she'd been handing over for over a decade for no reason at all. Now here's what you do this week. You call your county assessor's office, or you look them up online, and you say 5 words. Do I qualify for homestead? Then ask specifically about the senior exemption, the over 65 exemption, and any low income or veteran add-on. Write down what they tell you. File the form. It's usually 1 page. It's usually free. That alone is worth the time you're spending with me today. But understand something. The homestead exemption only lowers the slice of your home they're allowed to tax. It does nothing about the fact that the value of your home keeps climbing and the tax climbs right along with it. Which brings me to the second thing, and it's bigger, because it attacks the part of this that keeps you lying awake. The freeze. Here's the open question. What good is a lower tax bill today if it just creeps back up every single year until it's worse than where you started? You felt this. Your home is worth more than it was 20 years ago. On paper, that sounds wonderful, but you can't eat your home's value. You can't spend it. And every time some assessor decides your neighborhood is worth more, your tax bill goes up, even though your income hasn't moved an inch. You're being taxed on a number that exists only on a piece of paper, while the actual money in your account stays exactly the same or shrinks. This is where the senior freeze comes in, and I want you to understand how genuinely powerful it is. A growing number of states now let qualifying seniors freeze the assessed value of their home. Not the tax rate, the value itself. Once you lock it in, it doesn't matter if every house on your street doubles in price. Your taxable value is frozen at the day you qualified. The market can go wild and your bill stays put. Some places call it an assessment freeze. Some call it the senior valuation freeze. Illinois has a version. Texas freezes school taxes for seniors the moment they turn 65 and file. Several states have their own flavors of it, and the rules differ. But the principle is the same, and it's a principle the Amish would recognize instantly, because it's about refusing to let an outside number decide what your home costs you. Let me tell you what that's worth in real life. I knew a couple, both retired, living in a town where home prices had been shooting up because younger families were moving in. Their neighbors' tax bills were climbing $400, $500, $600 a year. Theirs didn't move, not a dollar, because 3 years earlier they'd filed for the freeze. While everyone around them watched their bills swell, this couple paid the same amount they paid the year they retired. Over a decade, the difference between freezing and not freezing can run into many thousands of dollars. And here's the thing about a freeze that makes it even better than a one-time discount. It compounds in your favor. Every year, the gap between your frozen value and the real market value gets wider. And every year, that gap is money that stays in your pocket instead of leaving it. So you ask your county 2 questions now. Does my state offer a senior assessment or valuation freeze? And what's the income limit to qualify? Because most freezes do have an income cap, and that cap is often higher than people assume. Now, I want to slow down here, because if you've been listening and thinking this all sounds nice for people with more breathing room than you have, I need you to hear this next part. This is the part I built for you specifically, because somewhere in the last few minutes, a question started forming. If these breaks have existed since the 1930s, if states have had them on the books for decades, why did nobody ever tell me? Why did I have to find out from a man on the internet talking about Amish farmers? Hold that question. We're getting to the answer, and it's not a comfortable one. But first, the third thing, and this one is, for those of you on a true fixed income, Social Security, not much else, maybe a small pension, maybe just a check and a paid off house and a careful budget you've kept for years. I know some of you have been told your whole life that programs like this are for other people, people with property to spare, people with money. I'm telling you the exact opposite is true. The deepest relief in the entire property tax system is reserved for people in your situation, and it's the most underused of all. It's called the circuit breaker. The name comes from the same idea as the one in your electrical panel. When the load gets too high, it trips and it protects you. A property tax circuit breaker works the same way. When your property tax climbs past a certain share of your income, the program kicks in and gives you money back, because the people who designed it understood something simple and humane. A tax that takes a small bite out of a wealthy person's income can take a devastating bite out of a fixed income, and a fair system shouldn't let that happen. Over 30 states have some form of this. Some call it a circuit breaker. Some call it a property tax credit, or a property tax refund, or a rebate for the elderly. And here's the part that should make you sit up. In many of these programs, you do not have to owe income tax to get the money. You file a short form, you show your income's below the line, you show what you paid in property tax, and they send you a check or a credit. Some states even extend it to renters, because the landlord passes the property tax through in the rent, and the program knows it. I watched an older gentleman, lived alone, lived on barely more than his monthly Social Security, find out he qualified for a state credit worth several $100s a year that he'd never claimed. He'd assumed, the way a lot of proud, self-reliant people assume, that this was charity, or that it was for somebody worse off than him. It wasn't charity. It was a refund of money the system had already decided he shouldn't have to pay. He just had to claim it. So here's what you do this week, and it costs you nothing but a phone call and a little paperwork. You search your state's name in the words property tax credit for seniors or property tax circuit breaker. You call your county or your state Department of Revenue. You ask if there's an income-based property tax credit or rebate. And you ask for the income limit and the form. No tools, no risk, no cost. Just a form and a little of your time. And it's built precisely for the person who feels they have the least to spare. The Amish families I spent time with would never let money they didn't know walk out the door. They keep account books, real ones, by hand. They know to the dollar what comes in and what goes out, and they question every line of it. Not out of greed, out of stewardship. because money kept in the household is money that protects the family, and money lost to a bill you didn't know is just gone. And that brings me to the hard part. The answer to the question I told you to hold, why doesn't anybody tell you? Here's the uncomfortable truth, and I sat with this a long time before I understood it. Your county runs on property tax. It's the single biggest source of money for your local schools, your roads, your local government. Every exemption you claim, every freeze you lock in, every credit you collect is money that doesn't flow into that budget. So while it's all perfectly legal, perfectly on the books, the incentive to walk you through it, to make sure you claim every dollar you're owed simply isn't there. The forms exist. The programs exist. But the burden is on you to find them, to ask for them, to file them. And the quiet truth is that billions of dollars in exemptions and credits go unclaimed every single year by people who qualify and never knew. It was designed to be opt-in. You have to raise your hand. And most people never learn they're allowed to raise their hand at all. The default, the thing that happens if you do nothing, is that you pay the maximum. Doing nothing always costs you the most. That's not an accident. That's the design, which is exactly why I held the fourth thing for last, because everything I've told you so far lowers your bill. This last one can end it. This is the property tax deferral. Now stay with me, because this is the most powerful tool in this entire video, and it's the one that sounds too good to be true until you understand the history behind it. Here's what a deferral does. In a number of states, a qualifying senior can legally postpone paying their property tax. Not reduce it, postpone it. You stop writing the check, you keep living in your home. The unpaid tax doesn't disappear. It accrues as a lien against the property, and it gets settled later, usually when the home is eventually sold or passes to your estate. In the meantime, you pay nothing, and nobody can take your home for it. Think about what that means for a senior whose income is fixed, but whose home value, and therefore tax bill, keeps climbing. You're house rich and cash poor, the most common trap there is for older Americans. The deferral breaks that trap. It says you don't have to drain your savings or skip your medicine to keep paying tax on a house you already own outright. You can wait. You can let it ride against the home's value and keep your cash for living. The roots of this go right back to that 1,839 homestead idea I started with, the principle that a family shouldn't be forced out of their home by taxation alone. Oregon built one of the first modern senior deferral programs back in 1963. Many states have followed with their own versions for homeowners over a certain age, often 61, 65 or older, sometimes with an income limit, sometimes with very generous terms. The interest charged on the deferred amount is usually low, far lower than what you'd lose by tapping a credit line or selling investments in a bad year. And here's why I say you might be getting this wrong right now, this very minute. Most seniors who qualify for deferral never use it, because the very idea of not paying a tax bill feels wrong to a generation that prides itself on paying its way. I understand that down to my bones. These are people who never missed a payment in their lives. So they keep paying, scraping it together, cutting back on food and heat and medicine, when the law has set out a perfectly legitimate door right next to them that says, you don't have to do this to yourself. You can stay in your home and stop paying now. That's the part almost everyone gets wrong. Not because they're foolish, but because pride and silence work together to keep them paying. The county won't tell you the door's there, and your own sense of duty tells you not to walk through it. So you keep handing over money you have every legal right to keep. I think about that old Amish farmer at the fence line. Never pay a man what you don't owe him, and never assume he'll tell you when you've stopped owing it. The Amish understand something the rest of us forgot. The institutions around you are not your enemy, but they are not your shepherd either. They will not look out for your household. That job is yours. Nobody is coming to make sure you kept what was yours. You have to know the rules better than the people collecting from you. So here is exactly what you do, and you can begin this weekend. You make a list of 4 phone calls or searches. 1, ask your county assessor about the homestead exemption and every senior add-on. 2, ask about the senior assessment or valuation freeze and its income limit. 3, ask your state about the property tax credit or circuit breaker for seniors. And 4, ask the words that almost nobody asks. Does my state offer a senior property tax deferral? And how do I apply? Write down every answer. File every form. It is the highest paying paperwork you will ever do in your life, measured by the hour. Because the whole point of this isn't a tax trick, it's this. Money you stop losing is money you get to keep, and money you keep is security you don't have to beg anyone for in your last years. That's what was quietly taken from you, year after year in silence. And that's what you get to take back, starting now. I think you already know what kind of person you are. You're the kind who worked your whole life, paid what you owed, and asked for nothing you didn't earn. So I'm not asking you to take a handout. I'm asking you to stop handing over money the law already says is yours to keep, the same way those Amish families never let a dollar leave the household that didn't have to. Now I want to hear from you. Of those four, which one shocked you the most? Was it the freeze that locks your value forever? Or was it the deferral, the one that lets you stop paying entirely and stay right where you are? Tell me in the comments which one you'd never heard of, and tell me if you're going to make those phone calls this week. I read them, and I want to know. And if you're done quietly losing money to systems that were never going to remind you what's yours, then come stand with the rest of us who are taking that discipline back one household at a time. Subscribe and stay close, because next time I'm going to show you the old Amish practice for handling a medical bill without insurance, the one that's kept entire communities out of debt for over 100 years, and why a single phrase they use can cut a hospital bill nearly in half. You're going to want to be here for that one.